The Young and the Restless spoilers in a shocking turn of events that has left fans of The Young and the Restless reeling. The soap opera community is bracing itself for the possibility that one of its most iconic and beloved characters, Devon, could soon be written off in a devastating storyline that ends in his death. While nothing has yet been officially confirmed, a growing number of hints, spoilers, and behind-the-scenes whispers suggest that Devon may indeed be the next victim in the dark wave of tragedy sweeping through Genoa City. What makes this potential loss even more painful is the strong belief that this narrative decision is not merely a creative choice, but a direct result of the actor's desire to move on. Possibly lured by the expanding success and lucrative opportunities offered by CBS's breakout primetime series Beyond the Gates. For many viewers, the idea of Devon leaving is not just surprising, it's unthinkable. Devon has been part of the Young and the Restless universe for more than 4 decades, growing from a troubled teenager into a commanding presence in Genoa City's elite. His transformation over the years wasn't just written into the script. It was earned, built upon layer after layer of carefully constructed backstory, raw emotional performances, and an evolution that made Devon not only a central figure in the Winters family but a moral pillar of the entire show. His presence has always been steady, reliable, and complex. From heartbreak to triumph, from betrayal to forgiveness, Devon's character carried the kind of emotional realism that is rare in long-running soaps. To lose him now, especially through a murder plot, would be more than dramatic. It would be traumatizing, both for the characters in the show and the viewers who have followed him for a generation. It is difficult to imagine Genoa City without Devon, much in the same way it would be impossible to imagine it without Nick, Adam, or Billy. These are not just fan-favorite characters, they are the foundation upon which entire arcs are constructed, families are defined, and loyalties are tested. Removing Devon would unravel decades of narrative continuity. But sometimes, as fans well know, a character's fate is not entirely in the hands of the writers or producers. When an actor decides it is time to step away, the entire structure surrounding that character must be reconsidered. And it seems that in this case, the actor behind Devon may be ready to take that step, not because of a lack of love for the show or the audience, but because a new opportunity is pulling him in a different direction, one that may promise creative expansion and, more realistically, a significantly higher paycheck. Beyond the Gates, CBS's rising star in the primetime lineup, has been aggressively expanding its cast, pulling in powerhouse actors from daytime television in a move that is both strategic and calculated. Rumors have been swirling that Devon's actor has been approached with an offer too substantial to refuse, a leading role, a major character arc, and a contract that would outshine what daytime TV could reasonably offer. For an actor looking to grow, to evolve, and to challenge himself with new terrain, it would be difficult to turn that down. And so, as heartbreaking as it is, fans may need to accept that Devon's departure is not about betrayal or abandonment. It's about evolution, his, not ours. Still, the emotions are raw. For longtime viewers who have stood by Devon through every trial. His adoption by the Winters family, his hearing loss, his roller-coaster relationship with Hillary, the heartbreak of losing her, and the path toward rediscovery through fatherhood, philanthropy, and business. The notion of losing him to a faceless off-screen death would feel like an insult. A character of his caliber deserves a fitting send-off, one that acknowledges his legacy and respects the emotional investment fans have made. Whether his exit comes via a grand sacrifice, a fatal betrayal, or a mystery murder that ignites a new storyline, the only thing that can soften the blow is the dignity in how it's portrayed. There's another layer to this that cannot be ignored. The departure of Devon, if it happens, would come at a time when The Young and the Restless is already undergoing considerable shifts in its cast dynamic. With characters like Phyllis dancing between alliances, Victor plotting in the shadows, and emerging characters like Audra, Claire, and Kyle staking out new territory, the foundation of the show is in transition. Devon has long served as a bridge between generations, between families, between ideologies. He is a link between the past and the future, and removing him could create a void not easily filled. No one can simply be written in to replace what Devon represented. He was a symbol of redemption, a man who rose above trauma and adversity to become a role model, a businessman, a father, and a son, not just to his family, but to the audience. Even within the narrative itself, Devon's absence would be seismic. How would Lily cope without her brother's guidance and emotional support? What would become of Chancellor Winters, the company they worked so hard to build together? What impact would it have on Abby, on Dominic, on Amanda? Characters whose lives are deeply intertwined with Devon's? Would his death spark a revenge arc, or a family fracture, or perhaps a courtroom showdown? Could this be the catalyst for Nate's final redemption or Elena's return? The ripple effects would be tremendous, and the writers would need to construct not just a shocking exit but a compelling aftermath to match. Yet, even in the heartbreak, there must be space for gratitude. Devon's journey on The Young and the Restless has been a gift. For over 40 years, he has been a mirror reflecting real struggles and real triumphs. He has represented inclusion, overcoming adversity, and building legacy. His romantic arcs have been among the most memorable, and his business battles among the most compelling. He has fought, cried, lost, and loved, and through it all, he remained true to the spirit of the show. If he must go, then let him go with the respect he has earned. Fans should not let grief turn into bitterness. If the reports are true and Devon is moving to beyond the gates, then the best thing we can do is support him in this new chapter. Yes, we'll miss him. Yes, we may mourn what Genoa City becomes in his absence. But our love for the actor and the character must transcend the boundaries of a single show. If he finds success in his next role, that success belongs to all of us who believed in him from the start. And perhaps one day, when the stars align and the timing is right, Devon may find his way back home, to the place where he became a legend. Until then, we must brace ourselves. The streets of Genoa City are growing darker, and if Devon is indeed the next to fall, then the story must honor him not as a casualty, but as a titan. A man whose legacy cannot be silenced, even by death. A character whose shadow will continue to guide the show long after his final breath. And as the audience watches that final episode, whether it ends in gunfire, a whispered goodbye, or a cliffhanger mystery, the echo of his presence will remain, stitched into the soul of the young and the restless. Farewell, Devon, if indeed this is goodbye. You were never just a character. You were family. No one expected Devon to die. No one thought that in a city already soaked in betrayal, saturated with vengeance, and scarred by secrets, the most measured, reasonable, and honorable man would become the next victim of a war he had so carefully avoided. His death was not just a tragedy, it was a seismic rupture. Devon had stepped away from the chaos, withdrawn from the battlefield that consumed so many lives, choosing instead peace, family, and purpose. But peace is rarely a guarantee in Genoa City or Nice, and sometimes even the innocent become the message. Carter had become a name spoken in hushed tones, not out of mystery, but out of pure fear. He was no longer a man but a specter lurking in the shadows of broken alliances and covert wars. Though many believed him to be a free agent, a madman with a thirst for chaos, the truth was far more chilling. Carter was simply an executioner. The blood on his hands was not always his decision. He killed because someone told him to. And when he moved, it wasn't impulse, it was order. The real monster was hidden behind the veil, whispering instructions from a place of darkness, power, and total immunity. Carter obeyed. And this time, his next command was Devon. It made no sense. Devon was not part of any war. He had stepped away from Chancellor Winters' volatile boardroom struggles. He had refused to side with Victor or Kane in their ruthless games. He had not picked up the sword. He had laid it down. With Abby and Dominic by his side, Devon had chosen a different path, one paved with clarity, warmth, and love. Their move to Nice was a declaration. They would no longer be pawns in a game where loyalty was bought and bloodshed came at the price of silence. They wanted a life. They wanted safety. But the illusion of safety proved as fragile as glass when Carter arrived. The murder was clean. Too clean. Devon never saw it coming. There was no struggle, no warning, no confrontation, only silence and then nothing. Abby, out on a walk with Dominic, returned to find the villa gates slightly ajar. She never made it through the front door before collapsing to her knees. The forensics would later say the cause of death was swift and clinical, the work of someone who had done this far too many times. There were no prints, no traceable DNA, no footprints. Carter had disappeared like a phantom, leaving behind only the echo of devastation. The news traveled fast. Lily collapsed in the Chancellor Winters conference room when the call came in. Nate stood paralyzed, unable to comprehend how a man like Devon, who had survived more than most, could be gone in an instant. Victor said nothing, but his silence was thunderous. Amanda's scream was heard through the hallway before she locked herself in Devon's penthouse, refusing to speak, refusing to believe. Even Billy, hardened by countless deaths and betrayals, stood at the bar that night longer than usual, staring into his drink like it held the answer to why innocence never survived. The worst part wasn't just the loss. It was the unanswered question, why Devon? What had he done to earn a death so precise, so targeted, so devoid of mercy? And more pressingly, who gave the order? Because everyone knew Carter did not kill without command. Someone wanted Devon gone, not just removed, not just threatened, but obliterated. And that someone now had the full attention of everyone left standing. As authorities scrambled for leads, Carter had already vanished. Some believed he had returned to Genoa City, hiding among the ruins of alliances. Others speculated he had never left France and was protected by layers of corruption, paid silence, and untraceable power. Victor launched his own investigation, using private networks and deep-cover operatives, bypassing law enforcement entirely. For him, this was personal. Devon may not have been his blood, but he was family in every sense that mattered. Abby was inconsolable. She refused to return to Genoa City, instead burying herself in memories, clinging to every photo, every note, every fleeting trace of the man who had promised her peace. Dominic was too young to understand what had happened, but the void was already shaping his world, one absent of the steady hands that once held him. Abby, once a fighter, now moved like a ghost, her grief too vast for tears, her anger too deep for words. What Devon's death triggered was not just sorrow, it was fury. Genoa City had seen murder before. It had endured betrayals, exiles, fake deaths, and shocking returns. But this was different. This was the killing of a man who had done everything right. And it struck a nerve that even Victor couldn't control. The rules had changed. No one was safe. And now, even the ones who believed themselves outside the war were dragged into it, because Devon's death made it clear, neutrality was no longer an option. Still, the question remained. Would Carter ever be caught? And if he was, would he even talk? Or would he, like always, protect the one who had sent him? Because for all his brutality, Carter was loyal, not to justice, not to morality, but to whoever controlled the leash around his neck. That loyalty made him dangerous. But it also made him vulnerable. Somewhere, there was a name. A face. A motive. A person powerful enough to command death and have it carried out without a whisper. And until that person was unmasked, no one could sleep. Authorities doubled their search, but Carter remained untraceable. Abby, Lily, and Nate demanded justice, but all they received were apologies and dead ends. Devon had become a lesson, a brutal reminder that even peace has a price. His death became a symbol. Memorials were erected. Foundations were created in his name. But none of it brought closure. None of it answered the questions screaming in everyone's minds. Why was he targeted? What threat did he pose? And most terrifying of all, who's next? Amanda, broken and silent, returned to court. She filed motions. She demanded hearings. She subpoenaed everyone from Carter's known associates to business rivals. She cross-examined with fire, dissecting alibis and timelines like a surgeon. She would not rest until someone paid. And as the city watched her, they began to believe, perhaps justice wouldn't come from the system. Perhaps it would come from vengeance. Victor, meanwhile, began his own form of justice, one with no judges, no juries, and no forgiveness. If Carter could not be found, then the one who sent him would be. He summoned old enemies, reignited dormant alliances, and activated resources most people forgot he even had. Someone had dared to strike at the very soul of Genoa City. And Victor would strike back. As weeks passed and Carter remained a ghost, the city's grief turned into obsession. Every conversation circled back to Devon. Every event was shadowed by his absence. And yet, within the grief, something else stirred: unity. People who hadn't spoken in years reconnected. Enemies called for temporary truces. Devon's death, though rooted in horror, began to crack the walls built by bitterness. Even Jack found himself writing a note to Abby, not as an abbot, not as a businessman, but as someone who had lost a friend. Still, none of it could change what had been done. The quiet villa in Nice stood empty now, a tomb of memories. The scent of lavender still lingered in the hallways, Dominic's toys remained untouched, and the chair where Devon once read his son bedtime stories sat undisturbed. The man who had never wanted war had become its first casualty. And though he was gone, his death screamed louder than any words ever could. Carter may still be out there. He may still have blood on his hands and orders in his ears. But the world he once moved through in silence was no longer his to control. Devon changed that. In dying, he awoke a sleeping city. And now, the game had changed. Because monsters don't live forever. Even ones with orders.